So now I'm attempting to convert this to a period counter because the frequency counter for the anemometer is going to be such a low frequency just because it takes so long to make that rotation, and maximum 1 or 2 or 3 max in 1 second in this 1 second interval. So we still have the same frequency counter. I have now put the 100 hertz test signal on there, but that test signal is not going into the clock of the frequency counter directly. It is actually going through a separate T flip-flop. So when that T flip-flop is on, that T flip-flop sends a signal to the base of this transistor, which is in 2N2222. The 100 hertz signal is coming into the collector of that transistor, and when the T flip-flop is on, it turns on that transistor, and the emitter of that transistor sends through that yellow wire into the clock of the frequency counter. So when that T flip-flop is on, you're getting the 100 hertz signals submitted. However, as we turn the anemometer is set to turn off the flip-flop. It's a T flip-flop, so it basically toggles on a falling edge trigger, and when you do that, it turns off. And when it turns off, the 100 hertz signal is no longer passing through that transistor, and it's 0. So with this gating signal, got to time it right. When you turn the flip-flop on, during the gating signal, and I'm just twisting this to just turn the T flip-flop on and off. It's off now, and if I do it during the 1 second on period of the gating signal, you get a reading of 31. Now reset, obviously. I'll do it again. 23, 20, 32, and this is in hundredths of a second. So in this way, the longer it takes this to spin around, that number goes towards 100. Every time that T flip-flop is on, and then it turns off after a complete period. So basically, this one rotation of this will trigger a full period, and during that period, the amount of, or the number of pulses that come through that 100 hertz test signal will be displayed on the counter as hundredths of a second. In this way, when you see numbers here, 66, 40, the longer the period, the closer it is to 100, the closer it is to 1 rotation per second. If it's 50, it's 2 rotations per second. If it's 30, it's 3 1/3 rotations per second, or 3 and change rotations per second. If it's 10, it's 10 rotations per second. And so in this way, you get a lot more resolution on the counter. However, we're going to have to figure out a way to do the math in the circuit. And I think that will require some form of divide by n counter, down counter chip, maybe a way to count down from 6,000, which will give us a precise measurement of number of periods in the 6,000, which will be equivalent to RPMs. Anyway, so this is now a period counter. The only downfall of this is I built this as a frequency counter, so the gating signal is 1 second. Only if that gating signal is turned off, it doesn't measure anything. So let me turn the flip-flop off, and the gating signal just turns everything off and gives you a value of 0. Anyway, it requires switching around the order of things here, but if we can get the gating signal to stay on for a little bit longer, it'll give us a little more time to measure things. But I think the 1 second is adequate. Maybe we can AND the two together, which effectively it's already ANDed together through the 2 transistors. There's 1 transistor here from the gating signal, and 1 transistor here for the T flip-flop. Anyway, the T flip-flop circuit is basically made out of transistors here, and this is the circuit if anybody's interested. But it works very well. It uses 2 transistors, basically like an RS latch made out of transistors, but it's got these 2 diodes and 2 capacitors here, and a negative edge trigger from the input. Falling edge trigger from the input will toggle it off and on each time. So anyway, the anemometer has a built-in NOT gate, which takes that signal and makes a pulse in this LED right here. That LED, as soon as that LED is on, it goes on. As it goes off, the T flip-flop goes off. Goes on, falling edge, boom. Works fairly accurately in terms of period. And to make sure your 100 hertz signal is good, you just leave the toggle flip-flop on. My signal is about 112 hertz, 111, 109. You know, it fluctuates a little bit. It's breadboarded, so it's a little, it's not perfectly accurate, but if I put it on a PCB, it'll be nice and accurate. So anyways, thanks for watching.